the kids were my bright spot. When I taught, I come in rapping, freestyling. If they made good choices, I would let them use their science vocabulary, right, to create bars and lyrics, because music is one of the highest forms of intelligence, right? If you can use similes, metaphors, literary devices, memorize it, right, and then like comprehend it enough to like convey it to others, it's listening, speaking, viewing, and it's a hell of a workout for the brain, right? So people think music is entertaining. I would say I'm not your entertainment ever. And my kids are not here to tap dance and entertain you. What they're showing you is the dopeness of their genius so much that they can deliver it to you in compelling, diverse ways. And the adults don't even understand it, right? Because the school system is what? Linear, straight, silent, and boring.
Welcome to State of Ed, a podcast about education inside the classroom and out. My name is Marc Isaacs.
And I'm Nick Simone.
How are you today, Nick?
I'm doing well. Very much looking forward to our guest. How are you doing today?
I'm well, and I am also looking forward to our guest, who is Dr. Anashay Wright, speaker, educator, and founder and CEO of Disruptive Partners, an organization passionate about helping transform schools into environments that celebrate each student's uniqueness and fostering cultures of inclusivity. She's also a bit of a hip-hop paradox because she purports herself to be a huge Jay-Z fan, but her amazing nickname, Teach 'em Right, is a clear homage to Chub Rock. Dr. Wright, welcome to the podcast. You have a lot of explaining to do.
I surely do, but thank you so much for having me, Nicky Nick and Marky Mark. So glad to be here. Yes, I am Anashay Wright. I am a mother first educator, disruptor of good, and an AI optimist. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. And this is Portia, my coworker.
So of course our listeners can't see this, but she is showing just like the cutest dog you've ever seen in your whole life on the screen. So welcome, Portia, and welcome, Dr. Wright, to the podcast. You call yourself an AI optimist. Let's just jump right into that. What is an AI optimist, and why are you so optimistic?
Yeah, as an AI optimist, for me, it's about leaning into the power and the promise of AI, more specifically in marginalized communities. AI has truly been an ally to me professionally in the corporate K-12 public education sector. It has been an ally to my son, who leveraged it to write a compelling appeal to a college for admission. And it has the potential to close the wealth gap in ways that we have not seen. Especially in a country that worships the written word. I say game on. I used to have a hard time harnessing in my matrix web of thoughts, my tornado of thoughts, as I would call them. But AI allowed me to speak my genius into a tool to streamline, codify, and get it to the world. And so in turn, I taught students how to do that. And it has truly been an ally to my community.
Would you be able to tell us a little bit about your educational journey and how it led you to forming Disruptive Partners?
Yeah, I guess that would be helpful. So public education, K-12, and a little time in higher ed is my second career. My first career was in education nonprofit. Well, not education, was in nonprofit sector, more celebrity nonprofits. I was the co-founder of the Lisa Left Eye Lopez Foundation. And Left Eye was 1/3 of the pop group TLC. When she passed, her brother and mom asked me to launch their nonprofit. So I'm co-founder and founding executive director. Decided to have my son, and traveling to Honduras and back and forth to Atlanta, LA was a lot. So I became an educator in Metro Atlanta, and started out teaching third grade. My first year teaching, I made an educational rap album with my students called The New Nerds. And then looped up with them to fourth grade. So they had a great year. They all passed. We would call it a learning party every day. So I taught in the classroom for about 6 years. I've taught every grade, K-12, either as a specialist or a classroom teacher. I'm special ed certified still. And I've taught over 2,100 students and never written a kid up in my life. So that is my classroom experience. Then went on to work for national consulting firms like the TNTP, the New Teacher Project. I was a partner for them for nearly a decade. I worked with them, leading educators. And then to start my consulting firm. I've always had consulting as a side hustle, but I've been doing it full time for like the last 2 to 3 years.
2,100 students and no referrals. So then they all must have been incredibly well behaved all the time. That's how fortunate for you.
Less about behaved and engaged intellectually. You know what I mean? I'm serious. I think we try to control bodies when we can't engage minds. So because they were engaged intellectually, because I made time to listen and learn, and because I knew my job was to serve, not save kids, I didn't have problems. You know, they call me Mama Wright, and they gave me my name, Teach 'em Right. You know, I said, why? A parent could say, I'm gonna call you Teach 'em Right, and I said, why? He said, because you don't teach them wrong. So that's how I got my name. Shout out to Walt Williams. He was he was a single father raising his son when I taught 3rd grade, and we are still good buddies. And Trayvon is 23 now. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But that's the power of relationships, you know.
I can see right away that you would be like just an outstanding teacher in the classroom, that kids would be on the edge of their seats, listening to everything you have to say and being inspired and motivated, like you said, engaged. No, you're laughing, but you have such a tremendous presence and great personality. And, Mark and I talk about what it takes just to be a really great, effective teacher. And there's so many different components, but that is one of them. You have to sell your kids on what it is you're trying to instill in them.
I didn't know what I was doing. Like I'm an alternative certified teacher, right? So you take a test, you have a degree, you're like, boom, I got this job. So I'm getting into these like the onboarding teacher workday thingy, and they're all like, yeah, we're gonna unpack the standards. I'm like, unpack my car? Like, I don't even know what that is. Like, but I didn't. I was just like, what? Like, they had snacks and all this food. I was like, this how y'all living? Like, I like this, right? But what I did take seriously was I knew the standards, right? Because they were so very standard and basic for kids. I'm like, okay, what do I have to teach these kids by the end of the year? How do I learn what moves these kids so I can align my practice to their hopes, their dreams? I just always felt like our mission should align with their vision. So I knew what the kids wanted to hear. I knew what they valued. And I just aligned, if John Quavius wanted to know how to be a businessman and sell his water bottles, I'm like, man, in math today, I'm going to tell you how you're going to learn these skills to sell them water bottles, right? Like if you know what they want, why wouldn't you align everything you say and do to their hopes and dreams? Even as young as 8 years old, they knew the hopes and dreams they had for themselves. So I did, it was just, to me, it was what I would want somebody to respect me and do, right? And so that's how I approached the classroom.
You definitely know what you're doing, because what you're doing is you're individualizing the learning experience for each of your students. They all have different, they're all going to take different paths. But at the end of the day, you're trying to, get the skills into them that are going to help them to be successful. Like you said, whether it's selling water bottles, whether it's becoming a lawyer, it doesn't matter. And I love, and you have a great personality, and kids are going to gravitate to that. So
thank you.
I'll just before Mark goes, a coworker and I were doing a workshop for new teachers this week, and one of the things we're putting up there for the new teachers, if you remember when like President Obama there was one time they were asking him about foreign policy, and he said something to the extent of like, don't do stupid stuff, like keeping it simple, like why would you do stupid stuff? And we're going to put up there, don't be boring. Like, just don't be boring. Kids don't want somebody in front of the room who's boring. And you obviously are far from that.
Yeah. And, unfortunately, there's a campaign that my children taught me about called, it's SCHOOL, and it stands for the 6 cruelest hours of our lives.
Oh my God.
And that's what it breaks down. And so my daughter sent it to me a year ago. And to your point, Nicholas, it's something we need to think about. As the brain goes, right, so does everything else, right? And so if a mind is bored and disengaged in school, I seriously doubt much learning is happening. And so we have to diversify our approach because we have such a diversified classroom of thinkers. So, you know, I'm ADHD. I was diagnosed as an adult, and I'm neurodiverse. But I believe that's my superpower. And thanks to innovative tools like AI, that can finally capture the tornado, right, and reel it in and get the gold in it.
It's not about reeling the tornado in. It's about it's finding the tools to leverage the tornado and take it to new levels. That's the magic of the technology.
I like that. I like that better. Leverage the tornado. Yes.
And as bad as that acronym is, for us, it's worse because it's 7 cruelest hours of our lives.
Baby, listen, I see, I don't know. The kids were my bright spot. When I taught, I come in rapping, freestyling, you know, if they made good choices, I would let them use their science vocabulary, right, to create bars and lyrics, because music is one of the highest forms of intelligence, right? If you can use similes, metaphors, literary devices, memorize it, right? And then like comprehend it enough to like convey it to others, it's listening, speaking, viewing. And it's a hell of a workout for the brain, right? So people think music is entertaining. I would say I'm not your entertainment ever. And my kids are not here to tap dance and entertain you. What they're showing you is the dopeness of their genius so much that they can deliver it to you in compelling, diverse ways. And the adults don't even understand it, right? Because the school system is what? Linear, straight, silent, and boring.
You know, we send mixed messages to kids because we talk about, and we even teach, you know, college students that students have different, you know, pathways to learn. You know, some of them are auditory learners, some of them. We say that, but then at the end of the year, we give them all the exact same exam to assess them. So we send mixed messages.
We do. And, you know, for my kids, it was like, okay, you got to pass a little lame test, game on. Let's just give them what they want so we can be done with it, right? Because again, standards are just that, standard. And my children aren't raised to be standard for anybody. They're raised to be legacies. So it's like, if standard bare minimal is what you want, you know, my kids, you know, I would just like, all right, this is what you need to know about a run on. But we made a song called Watch Me Stop That Run On. So on the test, you saw them, they were rap. It goes, wait a minute. Oh my goodness, I just overdid it. From too many ideas to a sentence fragment. But they were writing it, right? And 100% of my kids passed ELA's part of the test, state's test. And they would come in and proctor us saying, well, what are you doing? Cheating, baby, bring it on. And my parents signed a petition for me to take 28 kids from 3rd to 4th. I gained 3 weeks instructional time, and we did it again. So they couldn't touch the power of cultivating their natural born genius, but delivering it in a way that their brains, hearts, and minds could really. I took standards seriously. Like I took listening, speaking, viewing, writing very seriously as a lyricist and as an artist. And so teachers were just like, well, what is she doing? And I'm like, I align what I need to do to those that I serve. And you can miss me with whatever else you're talking about. Give me the standards and let me do it. And I think it caught on. I mean, my principal, he ended up letting me create the rap group, the New Nerds. We performed across the district. You know, they nominated for a Georgia Music Award. I had great leaders who didn't look like me. He was a white male. God rest his soul. He passed away last year, and we remained friends forever. But my first year teaching, he gave me the protection, and he leveraged policy in a way that prioritized people. And so that is the power of diversity, right? Like it's the power of people who don't look like you, who hold power and influence, and who align that with what the cover I needed as a Black woman, right? To support kids, right? That's the way this world should look.
Nick and I talk about this all the time. You know, there's the science of learning, which of course is powerful and informative, but then there's the art of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And what you did is you internalized the science of learning or the standards of learning, but it ran through your individual lens. And that was what best met the needs of your students, which is why they were able to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be able to promote the artistry not just the science behind the standards
Mhm.
and the science behind the learning. And that's what you demonstrated in your classroom.
And the brain work that goes into being able to do that too. It's not for you have to really, oh Lord, I learned in education, you have to codify and simplify. They love that word codify. I'm like, hey guys. So and I always cringe at people who need a Google Doc or Google Deck for everything. Because I was raised, if you're relying on that written word for the notes and the scripts, you haven't done your work to internalize the context. So for me with teaching, it was about internalizing my content. So it's like, I don't need a Google Doc or a deck because I've done the work off stage that I can teach in the desert and make sure kids learn, right? So I think there's an art and there's a science behind it. And I had to let people know the science of thinking is what I've always done. It's what our lyricists have done. It's what our writers have done. It's what some of the greatest minds have done, right? But we died to that in a system that tells us to rise in compliance and control.
Yeah, Mark and I both work on the secondary level, but I've just read too much about elementary schools where they're doing what you just said, making teachers follow a script like by the minute that this is what you're supposed to do. And I say, I can't imagine that this is what a 7-year-old, our students are unpredictable, but I certainly know elementary school students are, all over the place in their development. And it just horrifies me to think that this is what so many young teachers are being, compelled to do.
Well, yeah. And I would say my second round of this was in alternative middle and high school. So where I used AI was actually in middle alternative schools with some of the most at risk and at promise kids. So I was brought back into the school district in 2019 to build an intervention program. And this program was for a group of 12 children who were due to be kicked out of an alternative school. Right. So they told me 100% free and reduced lunch, 100%, nearly 100% had an average of 6 to 7 referrals a month. 100% were failing 2 or more grade levels. What the 100% that they didn't see was that 100% were geniuses. And I took those same practices and approaches. I prioritized ELA because it was a 3 to 4 week intervention program. So math, that was what the support they got outside of my program, but I focused on ELA. And within 45 days, they increased by 1.5, 1.5 of a grade level in literacy. 0 referrals, grades increased, right? And attendance went from an average of 67% to about 90%. Even with middle and high schoolers, my job is to do the offstage prep, understanding the foundation of the standards, what they need to know. On stage is understanding their hopes, dreams, and values, giving them some power. You got to seed power too, right? All of these kids love to rap. I would say it was 12.5% white males, 12.5% Latino, and then 75% Black boys. I think maybe 1 Black girl. So what you saw was that the boys across all races suffer, right, in school. Right. So we're not even like going there. Right. Let's talk about boys that transcend race. But again, they love music. Right. So, I talk about it in my keynotes, but big picture, it was like, okay, they wanted to argue. So I taught them to argue like an attorney, giving them the power. You know what I'm saying? Attorneys argue all the time. Right. So arguing isn't bad. It's just an academic setting. Let me show you the rules of engagement. So again, I just never thought like traditional people like, oh, they're arguing, write them up, blah. I'm like, it's so weird. Like they didn't have uniforms on. Okay, well, they need a belt. Here's a box of belts I had donated. Just put the belt on and go back to work. I'm not kicking you out of learning time because my need for control and compliance is so entrenched in me that I can't even think logically and just say, hey, let's move any barrier that keeps you from being the dope, brilliant kid that you were designed and destined to be. You have to shift from the problem of every child to the promise of every child. We've got to shift. We're not here to say, they don't need saviors. They need servant leaders. And until we disrupt this notion that we hear that our little children are broken and they need fixing. No, really, the adults got some broken ass issues, right? Like, and that's why you get into this profession thinking you're going to save people. No, deal with your issues at home. And don't bring that into our communities trying to save us. We don't need it. We need people who believe in our promise and our power.
That needs to become a TED Talk, just so you know.
Help me, man. I told you about that tornado. It's like squirrel. I never know how to like get things out there, you know.
Oh,
We just saw that tornado. And by the way, the fly got caught up in the tornado because it was circling you. Just a little insight for the listeners. There was a fly, before we got on, there was a fly that entered Dr. Wright's screen and it disappeared for a while. But then when the tornado started whipping up, the fly was literally circling around because it got caught up in the vortex.
I'm going to Mr. Miyagi it in 1 second. Just want to.
You know, as you're saying that, Dr. Wright, I'm reminded of a student that I had like almost 30 years ago who literally carried a baseball bat in the leg of his pants, his jean pant leg, to school because when he was walking or getting off the bus to and from school, he felt like he needed it for his protection. This is a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old at the time. And I was on a committee and we were trying to come up with different kinds of rules and policies to kind of spruce up, if you will, the student code of conduct. And so here we have this wonderful opportunity to almost like rewrite the rules and disrupt in the way that you're talking about. And the people on the committee were talking in terms of their priorities. Number one was like no gum chewing. Number two was no cursing. No wearing hats was number three, I think. And I'm thinking like, I just have this student and I finally like working for me. You know, I've developed a relationship and he's doing his work. I will buy him gum and I will buy him hats and I will get him whatever he needs to be comfortable if he continues to fulfill the promise that he has as a young man. He's got so many other things going on as indicated by the fact that he feels like he needs to carry this baseball bat as, you know, for protection. And I'm going to refer him or write a referral on him because of gum chewing. Like, what are we talking about here? This is, I know a lot of people don't believe this or think this way anymore, but there's still some. It's that cognitive entrenchment that's just trying to go the final mile here in creating progressive schools, that we're really running into all these different issues.
What pays my bills, right, in my consulting firm is strategy. Okay, so once I left the classroom, I became an instructional leader. And then from there, I went on to run state programs that certified teachers, right? Now, bulk of what I do is I design, like I help school districts with keynotes. I inspire them. And then I do a lot of strategy development, program design, right? I've been called the Olivia Pope of K-12 systems, right? I can design, I can break down a system and design a new one in minutes, right? And the strategy in my approach is I do that part of the work, but I'm also on the board for the National Parent Union. Shout out to Carrie Rodriguez. As a board member for the National Parent Union, that's where I feed or I quench my thirst for policy, right? Because it's going to take the sum of us, right? You don't disrupt the system by standing outside with signs and, you know, you don't disrupt the system. You build something better and you push kids and, you know, and so kids were beating down the classroom, beating down doors to get to my classroom. They couldn't understand why kids wanted to run into my classroom quicker than they ran out of school. So policy, that's where that comes in. And you have to partner with organizations because you're not going to change policy like that from within the K-12 system. At best, you can just close your door and do what you can do within the confines of that classroom, right? Mm-hmm. So what do you ask a school leader to do? Well, you ask them for a PD. Like, that's why I got into PD. My PDs that I do, it's like, okay, let me till the ground. Let me inspire educators first. Let me inspire change. Let me inform you, right? And then let's innovate together. So it is a multi-pronged approach if you truly want to create the learning environments that teachers deserve, right? Like, I'm also big on protecting our educators, right? And helping them tap into their humanity so that they in turn can create that environment for their kids. So educators are on the front line right now. And so for me, I knew that I couldn't address the systemic issues and my paycheck was involved. Let's be real here, right? Like I don't mix my passion with my paycheck, I tell people, but I do volunteer. I do serve on boards, right? And that's where I get that fix because they're the experts in doing that. So I do think schools need a cross-sector, a multi-pronged approach to disrupting for good if we want it to be sustainable. Because like, I mean, chewing gum, like for me, this is why I got my SPED certification, because in a special ed classroom with students with disability, I have the protection of an IEP and a 504.
First of all, every student should have an IEP. I mean, the whole point of education is for us to be able to individualize the learning experience for every kid so that he or she is successful moving forward. But you kind of answered my question, if I want you to just clarify this. So your real idea of disrupting the system is primarily focused on how teachers and leaders are dealing with the policies that we can't change in the short term. Is that, you said that's a fair assessment of your approach?
The fair assessment of my approach would be kind of like a bag of Skittles, right? Nobody wants a bag of Skittles with just green Skittles, right? I mean, I like red, but right, it's a rainbow or a myriad of skill set, expertise, and power. Okay, so in the confines of the school, you have the classroom, right? The first step is giving teachers the tools they need to personalize instruction. We can't give every kid an IEP. Let's be real here. You want to be real. Disruption is a synonym. You want to think about this as interruption. Interrupting the way we currently do business, right? And the concept of disruption, I adopted it from Harvard's disruptive innovations. So Harvard is really every business, Uber, right, was a disruption to the taxi cab industry.
Mm-hmm.
So disruption means you paid attention, you've listened to what people do and don't like, and you create solutions based on what people want, not what's broken. The disruption in the K-12 system is that we design everything based on what's broken. With the parent, we say the parent, they can't come because they work 2 jobs. That's a lie. There are parents that make 6 figures. Next. Okay. We can't do it because the teachers can't teach. Well, no, you haven't trained them on how to personalize or create inclusive learning environments. So miss me with that. And the kids can't learn. They actually can. They go to YouTube and learn 73% of their knowledge from hands-on. They can learn. They're not buying the whack, boring, blah, blah, blah instruction that you're giving. You're a boring teacher because you haven't trained the teacher, because the leader is scared, because of policy. So in turn, we all hurt in this system. So the shift is, if everything that I was trained to do with a kid is based on what's wrong with a kid, imagine a classroom where I based everything on what was right and what they could do. You know, to me, it's so simple, right? What are your teachers saying they need support with? They're not well. So create PD that makes them feel well. Teach them how a PD looks when it's inclusive of diverse, dope, brilliant teachers. But no, we like the equity oppression Olympics. I'm like, we're going to try to do DEI till I DIE and ain't getting nowhere.
Oh, that's the greatest line ever.
You see what I'm saying? Like, I used to go to these DEI. I be looking at the white people, y'all are evil. The white people be crying. Why? Because we just said they're evil. Who wants to help when you say they're evil for like 2 hours, right? Like, and what happens? We leave hurting. But no, I said, well, no, listen, my white co-conspirators, man, y'all know how to write them grants. Help a player write a grant outline, right? Oh, they love linear, straight, and docs and Google Docs and Google Decks. Well, help a player out, right? So again, lead with what you 2 guys have a podcast. Why would I go and start a podcast? Just invite me and let's get the resources we need together. It's stupid that we pit each other against one another. I love anybody who loves me, my people, my community, and leads with our promise. If you come with some deficit saviorism type foolishness, you will be disrupted. So I think we just have to like come together. It's like this scarcity mindset is really weird. It's room for everybody.
Dr. Wright, do you understand that you've just summarized 20 years of conversations that Nick and I have had, but you did it in 2 minutes and with more flair and brilliance than we could have mustered in 20 years of us having these conversations on the way to and from work every morning and afternoon?
So I have to, because you are absolutely brilliant and I could listen to you for hours. So I always do this now. So what were you like as a student? I need to know. I got to go back. I'm sorry. The reason why I ask is because I say to my students all the time, we create this model of like who the perfect student is when they were 16 years old. And if they're not at that, every school has that name of the one child, that was like the legendary student for 5 years. And I always tell my students, we all get to that point at a different stage in our life. We may not reach our pinnacle when we graduate high school. Now you can say, hey, Nick, I was great from the beginning. Like you could say that, but I'm dying to know what type of student you were and if there was a teacher that you had that maybe inspired you. Oh, she's putting the glasses on for this one.
Uh-oh. I don't know what that means, but I'm interested.
All right.
Well, okay, take a wild guess. What kind of student do you think I was?
Do you want me to go first, Mark, or you want to go?
Oh, I'm not going anywhere near this one. Are you kidding?
Oh, you're not touching that?
No, you brought this on yourself.
Yeah,
You're
come on, Nick.
All right, I don't mind. I'll take the risk. I would say that you were student council president, and you were an athlete, and you were a good student, very good student, but you didn't care about getting like the top grades, but you were solid student.
And you definitely started a club at some point along the way. That's my that in there.
You had to be student council president.
So, no, I'll start with the sad first. By the time I was 12, my mother was diagnosed with cancer. My mom was a single parent. So that leadership and activism part that you're talking about, it was more advocacy on behalf of my mom, right? Like chemotherapy. My mom was divorced twice, had been divorced twice. And so I became the pseudo husband. And I have two siblings, two younger siblings. Ironically, the youngest, my brother, he's 39. He suffered a stroke in June. So he's living with me now. So that kind of sums up who I was. I was always the caretaker. I was always sleeping class. So like you were lucky to get straight C's from me. Like straight C's was like honor roll for me. Because I worked, I've been working since I was 15. McDonald's, taking mom to chemotherapy. And then finally I had teachers that saw me beyond my circumstance. And finally, one day a teacher asked, like, what is going on? And I said, my mother is dying and I don't know what to do. And immediately, white principal Marianne Schreckengoss, my girl, who I still speak about in every keynote to this day, Sandra Austin, rest in peace. She was a parapro, but together they made it clear that you are enduring a pain that most adults don't even have to endure at your age. But they promised me if I gave my best, that they would put all their resources around me. And that's when the church pushed into the schools, right? That's when food banks and, people just pushed into the schools to serve. We have like 9 Black sororities and fraternities called D9. Delta Sigma Theta pushed into the school. And so now I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta. So my early influence of community pushing into the school and loving me beyond my circumstance. I graduated from high school in 96. I danced in the Olympics the summer of 96. And then my mom passed away in 97 at the age of 39. So I was that kid where I was just cool. Everybody knew me as the cool kid. My junior year, I won homecoming queen. Like I won best all around. You weren't going to get no A's or B. Like, I mean, I probably could have, but I didn't even see like science. If science had have been connected to a cure for cancer, I would have made A's. But I didn't see the relevance of my pain and what I needed and what I was learning. So I would not take anything serious because I didn't think it was worth my time. And my son is like that. I mean, he's a freshman in college. I mean, but he's on band scholarship. He's just, they're just cool. My daughter is a little more nerdy, but yeah, as a student, I was just like a little mama, right? I was always a leader. But I did start an organization in 97 in college that has been running for 25 years now. So
do I get half credit?
Yeah, you get credit. It just wasn't in high school, year after high school.
I'm taking it. I'm taking any win I can get. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I see, I grew up on free and reduced lunch. Like when I started teaching, it was like 2 little kids that came up to me and was like, hey, hello, teacher, where do I bring my lunch money? I'm like, yeah, I pay for lunch. Okay, so I made a kid the classroom accountant. I'm like, all right, you're going to become the accountant in classroom. You collect the money, since we got, like 2 out of 28 kids that pay for lunch, so, I just see, I've always saw reflections of myself. I know what it's like to have a teacher that doesn't ask what's wrong, but I also know what it's like to have a bunch of teachers and leaders that ask, what can we do to make it right?
Our schools are filled with the exact kinds of solutions that you're describing, but not in a good way, right? Everything, response to intervention and multi-tiered systems of support and all these things and remediation, they're all based on like waiting for it to fail and then trying to patch it up afterwards, as opposed to what you're describing, which is let's craft a better way forward so we can mitigate against those outcomes and create better scenarios, for all of our learners across the board, and not perpetuate a system that continues to show us the flaws every single year. We see statistically the same flaws, and they worsen, they don't get better. And we pour all this money and all these resources into them without really seeing the results. But yet we keep sticking with it. And what you're advocating is something completely different. I mean, that's literally the disruption that you're talking about.
Yeah. To make it more actionable, the disruption begins with what you actually believe. And I always ask people like, well, what do you believe about the kids you serve? Right. And that one question is like, well, I believe 9 times out of 10, the number one belief, well, I believe they're reading below grade level, or I believe we have struggling. If your first belief is something negative, you got to start over. And so I'm asking teachers, leaders, parents to think about what's that one big or what's that one small move you can make every day, because that is where the disruption begins. Disruption begins by interrupting the stories you have all been sold and told about these kids. And for a leader, they have to interrupt the story they have been sold and told about teachers and parents, right? And you lead with that. What I believed that every kid had to be a leader of their lives. They may not lead people, but they have to lead themselves to the bus stop. They have to lead themselves away from peer pressure. Everybody has to lead in life, maybe not lead people, but they have to lead themselves. So I taught every kid like they were the CEO of their life. And I looked at what are the 6 critical skills every leader needs to have. They have to know how to communicate. So that's music and talking, right? Defending a paper. And I don't care what age or grade. If you focus on what are the 6 critical skills any human being needs to be able to lead a life that is thriving, not surviving, you'd never have a problem. And you don't need an observation to force you to do that. Every educator that hears my voice needs to start with, what do you believe? Do you believe that every child is going to have to lead themselves and lead their life every day? Well, you better damn teach like it. Because they are your next doctors. They are your next lawyers. They're your next gangbangers if you let them. And even then, you got to look at the DNA of a gang structure. They even have leadership. They provide money, motivation, a sense of community. So if you want to compete with a gang, you better compete with a game in your classroom. You better make kids feel like they're leaders. Show them how what you're teaching connects to real life money. I don't know one kid that don't want to monetize something. And if you know as a teacher that you ain't never monetized nothing outside of the classroom, then get people in there who can. So we need to stop playing this game like we need a policy or procedure. No, you need a belief shift. And the question is, what will you do tomorrow with the gifts, the positionality? I don't care if you're the cafeteria worker. Will you say, good morning, David? Or will you say, good morning, future leader? Will you say, good morning, future mayor? Good morning, future CEO. Good morning, future president. Do that for 180 days and watch their amygdala become unhijacked. So that's what we have to do, is lead with the belief. And kids know you don't believe that they could lead anything, especially not their own lives. So there lies the conundrum. There is nothing anyone can do to make me not believe in the promise of every child. And I've taught kids that have murdered people or whatever. And even when they murder somebody, I still love you. I don't like your behavior, but I love you. And if you ever see the light of day, I'm holding you accountable to do something good with your life. And if we just do that, we see a major change. Lead with what a kid wants for their lives, and lead and teach every child like they are the future CEO of their life. And you will never go wrong.
That's such a spectacular statement. It really is.
So what are the, in the work that you do and the experiences that you've had, what are the obstacles, both external and internal, that are preventing the exact kinds of changes that you're talking about?
It's in the PD for me. It's in the professional development for the educators. Like, they're just not getting the training that they need to really create an instructional culture where kids thrive. So concretely, oh God, what? So I think it's odd that 50% of educators don't understand the generation of students that they teach. I think like they're like 5 to 10 high-level insights that if every educator had about today's student generation, right, they'd know their audience better, even if they didn't know individualized about every child, right? Like, okay, Gen Alpha. Do you know who Gen Alpha is? Everybody like, right, okay. So starting around 2010, that's your elementary student, is Gen Alpha. Gen Alpha is your elementary student, okay? Who is their favorite generation of people? It's the baby boomers. Why? Because baby boomers sit down, close their mouths, and actually make time to connect and listen. So again, now, so what does that tell a teacher? Oh crap, I just need to set aside 5 to 7 minutes, ask 1 or 2 questions, and just give kids time to just talk. Your reading block is gonna go a lot faster. Your math block, like they like to talk, you writing them up for talking, so hell, give them 5 to 7 minutes to just talk and connect. And then go into your lesson. No, what do teachers do? We're gonna get busy with the do now. They're like, we don't want to do that right now. Like, what the hell? Like, we're gonna do now. All right. Today we're learning standards. And no, today we're learning life lessons, right? Like, stop saying like you can say that in a staff meeting. Don't say it to the kid. Well, we got kids who come to school and their parents are like, you're not standard, but we're gonna learn some standards. Like, it's odd. So again, with the PD, like, just teach all teachers who the hell they teaching. Gen Z is your middle to high school, and then the workforce. Gen Alpha is your pre-K elementary up to like 6th grade. Just know 3 things about them. It would be impossible to teach the way you teach if you knew who the hell you were teaching. So it's like that one thing. Like, I would just go around the world and teach everybody 10 things you need to know about these generations. And that would radically shift. So that's why my son and I, we wrote our first book, and we modeled conversations at the table. So that's one thing that releases soon. We're like, oh, people don't know how to talk to kids, so let's model in spoken word how we talk at our table. So we're finally learning, just put it in a book and let people understand, the process and what it looks like. So I'm learning too, like, but I think those are the barriers. It's like, you put people in classrooms and they don't know the audience that they serve. Just that. Like, let's just stop there.
Like, how far is your organization's reach geographically? Are you focused primarily in one region? Are you able to spread out across the country?
Oh yeah. My son and I, we just got back from Cali. I did a keynote. Yeah, and he helps me facilitate workshops. He's 18. Then I'm going back to Cali. So no, wherever the budget is, that's where I go.
So now it's LL Cool J. You have me very confused, Dr. Wright.
Oh, here we go. Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. What are we talking about here? Okay.
I know you said going back to Cali, but you're a Jay-Z fan. You got Chubb Rock going on in the nickname. Now you got LL Cool J references. It's
not either or. It's that and, man. I don't live by either or standards, my brother. Okay, so Jay-Z is my business alter ego. He's a Sagittarius. And if you know anything about Sagittarius, we're straight shooters, we're business people. So Jay-Z is my business alter ego. But Beyonce is what I see when I wake up. So my favorite lyricist, though, hands down, Andre 3000 from Outkast.
Okay.
Yeah. So that I'm an ATL Southern playalistic, I'm ATL all day. LL Cool J is, when I'm feeling like I need love or something, I got a little LL in me. But I'm not going back. I mean, I go to Cali. Yeah, I'm going to Cali, because that's where the need is. Like, if people can afford it and not asking minority people to do stuff for free all the time. I had to stop doing that too, because I wanted to help so bad. I was like woke and broke. I was like, man, I want to help the community. I'm like, you know what? I can't do it for free. I just, so I don't know why as educators, I think we all feel bad monetizing in education. But that's such an enslaved and impoverished mindset that we all have to, there's a cost to do your podcast, like you need to go after some grants and funding to do the podcast, right? So yeah, I think we all struggle with that as educators, monetizing something that's supposed to be given freely, but not anymore. I'm like, no,
and that's okay. And that's okay to give yourself permission to feel that way, because it's a reality to just like any other art form, right? It does require resources in order to produce the art.
Yeah, I love partnering with guys like you. I'm honored that you would invite me into your space, your digital table. I'm very grateful.
Oh, it's our pleasure. It's absolutely our pleasure. And where can our listeners find you if they want to bring you to their school districts?
Oh, yeah. Email, but LinkedIn, Anashay Wright. Just Anashay Wright. And social media, Anashay Disrupts. Yep. So LinkedIn is the best place. I get to directly talk to people and leave a little voice note, and I really get to engage on that. But I'm on, what is it, X now? X is where we met, Mark, I believe. Yep. Yep. So I'm there, Anashay Disrupts. Facebook, Anashay Disrupts. IG, Anashay Disrupts. But my favorite is LinkedIn, because it's Anashay Wright. Even when I'm wrong, I'm right.
I can't wait to tell as many people as I can about you and your work. And I haven't decided if my wish is for you to teach every child in America or for you to train every teacher in America. I'm not sure, but of course I'll take both.
Yeah, we'll say train every child. While I love the children, I love vacation too. So I got my 2 kids in the house, so I think I'll take training leaders and teachers. And really the first step is inspiring them. I love to come and do inspiring keynotes and short workshops. That's the first step. Let me inspire you first, and then you decide if you want me back to inform you.
Well, you are most certainly doing that as well as anybody I've ever met.
Oh, you guys are adorable. Oh, you guys are my brothers now. I love this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wright. It really is such a pleasure to meet with you and hear your story and just feel your energy. And it's really wonderful and very inspiring for us to know that there are people out there who are doing incredible work, who are passionate and compassionate and really have a vision and a fire lit under them to go out and make a difference for others. And it's a beautiful thing, and it's so great to know that there's another wonderful person out there. And it was such a pleasure to meet you today.
Oh, thank you. I leave you with this. My dream and my wish is to give back to children and educators, what my community unselfishly gave to me, right? And that was hope, and that was inspiration. So if there's anything I can do to bring hope and inspiration to educators, so that they can give that to kids, I'm a phone call, email away,
If you'd like to catch up on previous episodes of State of Ed, you can check us out wherever podcasts are distributed: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. You can find us on the web, stateofedpodcast.com, where you'll also find links to what we've discussed here on the show. And I'm so excited to announce that my new book, Captivate, Engaging and Empowering Students in a World of Digital Distractions, will be arriving in just a few weeks. I cannot wait to share that with educators everywhere. You can follow me on Twitter at MarcIsix, or online, marcisix.com, or on YouTube at Edupyro, EDUPYRO. Special thanks to Dr. Wright for sharing her fire with us today. And thank you so much for joining us.